Na ovom posljednjem panelu ove dvodnevne konferencije postavljamo pitanje kako dalje u svetu uzbunjivača za pravdu i dostojanstvo. Vrlo zanimljiv sastav ovde pred nama. Gospodin Pol Stivenson je britanski stručnjak za ovu tematiku. Nekada je radio u ministarstvu pravde. Je li tako? Gospođa Snežana Andreјevиć je zamenica predsednika Vrhovnog kасационог suda. Tu je i Tom Devine, pravni direktor organizacije Government Accountability Project. Gospodin Devine je, za one koji možda ne znaju, čovek koji zna detektiva Serpika lično. Tako da, posle ga sve pitajte o tome i o tome kako je izgledalo to davno prošlo vreme uzbunjivača, koje može iz te priče da se analizira. Tu je gospodin Stevен iz organizacije National Whistleblowers Center i gospođa Ana Maјерс iz organizacije Whistleblowing International Network, a pištaljka je deo te organizacije. Sa njom ćemo razgovarati ovde i o važnosti, a opet vezano za prvi panel, i o važnosti da se vaš glas čuje i van vaše lokalne sredine ili van vaše zemlje. Nekada to, čuli smo na primeru od jutros, ima veliki uticaj i pomogne vam da zapravo u svojoj lokalnoj sredini pokrenete neka pitanja. Na početku gospodin Stevenson ima jednu prezentaciju, pa izvolite. Rekli su mi da posebno skrenem pažnju da niste bili tu juče i da vam sada, umesto da vas kaznimo, dajemo vam priliku da danas počnete.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here, and I should say it was, I feel there were favorable circumstances in Serbia that enabled it to do something in the law which is far better than we have in many other countries. And to start with, we had a genuine desire to get something done for whistleblowers, which started out with we had some important office holders involved, Mr. Sabic, Mr. Jankovic in particular, and Pishtalka, of course, were involved, but without the senior people wanting to do something, it wouldn't really work, would it? In fact, we see that in other countries around here, I mentioned Macedonia, they don't listen to NGOs at all. We had the model law, which was then taken up by the Ministry of Justice, who also wanted to get something done, and they discussed it at great length among stakeholders. I had the privilege of being there in Novi Sad, along with Madam from the Court of Cassation. We saw the energy with which the judges and prosecutors discussed the issues together and settled on what was the right way forward. So I think there was an excellent result, and not one problem with the result is it doesn't have any provision for review, which I did argue for, and so that's something we can come on to. I do see that it has a provision, Article 36, I think it is, which says that the Labour and Administrative Inspection will monitor the law. And I gather from Vladimir they're doing it, at least quietly, I think the Labour inspection in particular. And that brings me to one of my main points. I would say I like us to try and trust the regulators. I think whistleblowers should try and trust regulators. It may not work out, but how do we know which ones are wrong and which ones need to improve, and maybe which ones will never improve if we don't trust them in the first place? And we have heard from several whistleblowers here that some of the institutions did work. We had already, as been mentioned, Mr. Sabic and Mr. Jankovic here have done things. And we had one of the whistleblowers, from Bosnia at least, she found that the police and prosecution worked. Okay, the judge in that case seemed to have been biased in favor of the defendant, but the police and prosecution did their best, she said so. But if we don't trust them in the first place, we're not going to find out those things. And of course, if regulators do their job, then whistleblowers don't need to go to court, which is a hugely horrible thing for everybody. So I'd like to see efforts to enhance the role of regulators, and that's what has been going on in the United Kingdom. The main result of the review of our law was that the regulators should be pushed to involve themselves more and to make them report to Parliament on what they have done with the whistleblower reports they've received. And the government have said they will do that, but we haven't still seen any sign of it, as I understand it. So, when we come to the press, I think the press should be the last resort. Partly because they don't have powers to put things right. They can make a fuss, okay, and possibly something will happen, possibly not. And I do think that the Serbian law, as it was enacted, is, at least it looks, a little bit too restrictive, and it says you can't go to the press with classified information. And I do recall that the first draft model law said that the public shall not be informed about classified information with the highest level of confidentiality. So that looks like a better law for the whistleblower in that particular respect. So it might be something to think about. But I'm aware of the fact that you have this provision in your law which says that if it's a cover-up, then it's not confidential, which is a bit like the principle we have in our law, which says there is no confidence in iniquity, so that if something is illegal, then it's not confidential, basically. So maybe that works enough, but it's something to be seen. As a bottom line, I do think there are some things governments are right to keep quiet, and whether they're right or not, they're going to do it, that's for sure, security service, so there's not much point in trying to change that in a way. The way they've dealt with this in Ireland, which I think is the best one I know, is where if you're in the security service, you have an issue, you can go to a totally independent judge who will hear that. Whether he is totally independent, I don't know, but he's a judge, so there's a chance. But personally, I do believe there's some things the public, we can't put them out there, and it's to do with national security, and it's not, and they can cause damage if they are known, especially in terrorism and things like that. And I think the other interesting question to think about in the future is the payments by the press. We've had huge trouble with that in the United Kingdom. The behaviour of our press, I mean, I must exempt everybody who's here from the press, I'm sure they're nothing like this, but we have in Britain, the most widely read press is the tabloids. And they tap people's phones, they collect information illegally.
No need to explain that.
Oh, you know it, okay, right. But about the experiences maybe, about them making payments, you know about this, payments to policemen, payments to prison officers, for things which some people then like to try and claim are whistleblowing, but they're not. I mean, they're about conditions of prisoners who they say they're getting too favourable treatment, which is pretty unusual in a prison, but this kind of thing. And of course, they've led us out of Europe, because they exert a political influence. I mean, we speak sometimes as if the press has no power, but it has a lot of power, and it's sometimes exercised in a very negative way. Let's have a look at, think about that. I mean, my main point is that we should have a review of the operation of this groundbreaking law in operation, and I think that there's a lot of countries could learn from the experience. It would be well worthwhile to stop people going down blind alleys, which I know they're doing in other countries around here, and we'll see if responsible whistleblowing, which is what the law encourages, can work in a country like Serbia. I hope so. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Ja mislim da je dobar način da sada dam reč gospođi Snežani Andreјevиć, zamjenici predsjednika Vrhovnog kasacionog suda, za koju mi je Vlada Radomirović rekao imaju u vidu sve ključne stvari iz zakona o uzbunjivačima, napisala je i u zakon je stavila gospođa Andrejević i tu insistirali ste na dve važne stvari. Mislim da je dobro da ovde o njima malo više kažete. Prva je privremena mera. Zašto je ona? Zašto ste nju videli kao najsnažnije oruđe za zaštitu uzbunjivača? I drugo je, zašto ste insistirali na tome da sudija u ovim slučajevima, kada uz pozivanje na ovaj zakon, bude obavezan da i sam vrši neku istragu? To se kod vas u pravu zove istražno načelo, čini mi se.
Zahvaljujem se na pitanju. Ja moram da kažem da sam se ja najviše u okviru ovog zakona bavila sudskom zaštitom, tako da ostale odredbe i zasluge za sve definicije, sve ostalo pripadaju i radnoj grupi i našim stranim ekspertima. Ono što je bila moja želja kao člana ove radne grupe, ja sam se kasnije malo uključila, gospodin Stivenson je ranije počeo da radi i gospodin Tom Divine takođe, u okviru saradnje našeg ministarstva pravde sa ekspertima, je baš da se pokuša da se sistem sudske zaštite, ukoliko se vlada opredeli da zaštita bude u okviru suda, jer je bilo više opcija, mora da bude uklopljena u sam sistem sudske zaštite u Srbiji, bez obzira na mišljenja o tome koliko je sudstvo ažurno, efikasno i sposobno, da bi taj zakon mogao da bude na najdelotvorniji mogući način primenjen u praksi. I pošto je opcija bila da to bude sudska zaštita, ugrađivanjem svih standarda koji postoje u svetu, koji su razvijeni, mi smo samo ponovili ono što inače kao sudovi i sudije moramo da primenjujemo u toku rada, a to je član 18 stav 3 Ustava Republike Srbije, koji obavezuje sudiju da u tumačenju prava i u primjeni propisa koristi i mora da taj zakon tumači saglasno praksi međunarodnih institucija koje štite to ljudsko pravo. Pošto se, kad su u pitanju uzbunjivači, radi o saopštavanju informacija, naravno da je najrelevantnija praksa Evropskog suda za ljudska prava i mi smo i te standarde imali u vidu. Međutim, imajući u vidu da su sudovi pretrpani, da pred nekim sudovima ima i po 2 miliona predmeta, da u Srbiji 2522 sudija ima 2 miliona i 800 hiljada predmeta, bez obzira što neki nisu istog značaja, da meritornih, takozvanih onih sudećih predmeta nema toliko, da su ovo predmeti izvršenja, ali kad vama vreme koje možete da posvetite suđenju oduzme stotine hiljada drugih predmeta, vi morate biti sposobni da onoliko vremena koliko imate kad dobijete predmet određene vrste, njemu posvetite maksimalno svoje vreme i rešite ga na najbolji mogući način za one koji traže tu sudsku zaštitu. Zato je uslov za primjenu ovog zakona sistemski bio da se uklopi, znači u postojeće postupke, da se zakonom ne propisuje neka posebna nadnacionalna, tako da kažem, zaštita uzbunjivača, nego da to bude ono što je sistemski prihvatljivo i što je kao najbrži put zaštite prošlo, taj test, ali da se sudijama omogući da reaguju na zahtevi zakona privremenim merama. Zato što ja lično smatram da su privremene mere pre pokretanja sudskog spora, kad je odmazda učinjena, onog momenta kad uzbunjivač pretrpi odmazdu i zatraži sudsku zaštitu, jer se praktično ona tad aktivira, sud tad mora da reaguje. Da se ne bi otežao položaj uzbunjivača, mi smo, sudije koje su bili članovi radne grupe, insistirali da uzbunjivač treba sudiju da uveri da je on u pravu do stepena verovatnoće. Da to ne bude onaj pojačani stepen izvesnosti kad je sudu potrebno vreme da kroz dokaze na pouzdan način dođe do zaključka da je nešto osnovano ili da nije osnovano. Znači, uzbunjivač je taj koji treba svoj slučaj da predstavi u toj ranoj fazi, uveravanjem suda da je on izvršio uzbunjivanje, znači saopštio je neku informaciju i da je onda usledila radnja koju on prezentuje sudu kao odmazdu. I sud na osnovu tih činjenica otkriva tu neku vezu i to sa najmanjim stepenom verovatnoće može da odluči da to reši privremenom merom.
Dakle, uzbunjivač je nešto prijavio i usledila je suspenzija ili otkaz. To je to što sudija treba da prepozna.
U zahtevu za privremenu meru, naravno, opiše se događaj koji se desio. Vi u samom tom činjeničnom opisu nekada vidite da to nema uzročnu vezu jedno sa drugom i onda nećete pružiti tu vrstu privremene zaštite. Ali u većini slučajeva to su dokazi koje uzbunjivač može da prezentuje da je izvršio saopštavanje, tako da kažem, tako što se obratio kanalu za unutrašnje uzbunjivanje ili kanalu za spoljašnje uzbunjivanje. Naravno, kad je to otišlo u javnost, tu nema problema, tu dokaze imamo. Vremenski možemo da odredimo sled događaja. A za unutrašnje i spoljašnje uzbunjivanje uzbunjivač ima dokaz, ima uverenje da je nešto saopštio, ima na šta se to odnosi, to je ono poverljivo što njemu daje onaj kao jedan dokument, kao jednu ispravu, da on jeste postupao kao uzbunjivač i da je neku informaciju saopštio. Sudija kad ima praktično taj dokument, kad ima opis i kad ima akt ili mu se opiše radnja koju je uzbunjivač pretrpeo, može na bazi zaključivanja, kažem, najnižeg stepena sudijskog uverenja, to je ta verovatnoća, da odluči da taj akt bude dislociran iz pravnog saobraćaja. Znači, da mu oduzme pravno dejstvo, da zabrani dalje preduzimanje radnja ako je faktička, jer se dešava da ljude zaključavaju, da polivaju, da buše gume, da, mislim, svakakva vrsta nasilja, odmazde može da se desi prema nekom fizičkom licu, jel? To može biti grupa koja se ponaša iz neke lojalnosti prema poslodavcu ili ličnosti koja predstavlja poslodavca da vrši odmazdu prema uzbunjivaču. Sud, znači, može da otkloni pravno dejstvo takvog akta ako se tiče radnopravnog statusa ili može da otkloni svojom odlukom, nasilj može da vrati na rad uzbunjivača, može da mu isplaćuje naknadu, a da ga ne vrati u proces rada ako procenjuje da to ne bi bilo u interesu tog procesa rada, naročito da ne ostanu ljudi koji izdržavaju maloletnu decu bez ikakvih prihoda. I kad se to desi, ta prava reakcija, ja tu privremenu meru pre pokretanja spora o kojoj samo odlučuje viši sud, bez obzira koji sud će posle da štiti uzbunjivača, da li upravni, da li osnovni, da li zavisno od postupka koji se vodi, on praktično omogućava da taj zakon funkcioniše. Za mene su privremene mere srce tog zakona. Drugo, ovo što ste me pitali, tiče se istražnog načela, a to je dispozicija ovog postupka. To su građanski postupci. Sve zavisi od jedne, odnosno od druge strane. Strane su ravnopravne, sud se ne meša u to. Znači, dokazi na kojima se zasniva presuda moraju da budu ponuđeni od jedne ili od druge strane. Ako vi uzbunjivača prepustite samom sebi u tom postupku, a da se sud izmakne iz tog postupka, kao što je inače to u građanskim postupcima, da nema ovlašćenja da istražuje šta je bilo i tako dalje, vi ćete omogućiti manji stepen zaštite tom licu koje postupa u društvenom interesu, postupa u javnom interesu, štiti državni interes, a trpi odmazdu ili od sistema ili od pojedinaca, svejedno, i njega nema ko da zaštiti. Znači, mora da ga zaštiti sud. Sud onda mora da ima proaktivnu ulogu, a to znači da sud kroz istražno načelo može da traga šta se zaista dogodilo. Stranka do kraja čak ne mora da kaže, a možda i ne zna da predstavi šta se dogodilo. Znate, vi ste pretrpeli odmazdu, ali vi ne znate šta sve ima iza toga. I onda je sud taj koji mora da prepozna tu situaciju i koristeći istražno načelo da utvrdi ono što zakon traži za zaštitu uzbunjivača. ne da navija za uzbunjivača ili za suprotnu stranu, nego prosto da omogući da zakon bude primenjen. Da utvrdi da li je to blagovremeno, šta se dogodilo, da li ima uzročne veze, da li postoje opravdani razlozi za takvo ponašanje ili ne, isključenje, i da, ako ne pre postupka, onda posle toga, u svakom trenutku odredi privremenu meru i zaštiti uzbunjivača. Jer ta odmazda može da traje, može da se ponavlja i radnje nasilja mogu da se menjaju. Ja moram digresiju jednu da napravim i da kažem da sam impresionirana panelom kome sam prisustvovala danas, koji ste vi vodili, gde smo čuli šta imaju da kažu uzbunjivači. To su priče autentične, emotivne i mislim da su presudne da budu prezentovane takve neke priče ili naše, ili da koristimo ove materijale u edukaciji sudija i mladih ili uopšte u edukaciji kad je primjena ovog zakona u pitanju, jer potpuno drugi vi osjećaje imate kad neko priča sa pozicije ličnog iskustva šta mu se dogodilo, a ne kad se sudija. Znate, nemojte misliti da opravdavam sopstveni posao ili zaključivanje, ali sudija sude na osnovu prepričanih priča. Sudija ništa lično nije nikad video. On samo zna ono što su mu drugi rekli da se dogodilo. U toj priči tu može da, znate, svedoci su nekad i nepouzdani. Ceo taj način zaključivanja i ta logika može da bude iskrivljena. Nekad kaže, pa kako oni to ne znaju? Pa ne znaju, niko nam nije rekao, a mi nemamo mnogo prava da sami kažemo, tako je bilo, ili da pretpostavljamo. Mislim, prosto, i zato je istražno načelo, eto, to je ono što je odgovor na vaše pitanje.
Hvala vam najlepše. Sada imamo ovde, ja bih postavila pitanje i pozvala i gospodina Toma Divajna i Stevena Kona da se uključe. Ako sam ja dobro razumela, vi predstavljate, a sve u sklopu priče kako dalje, dve škole mišljenja. Šta je važno, šta je najvažnije i koji je bolji put? Omogućiti uzbunjivačima maksimalnu zaštitu i učiniti ono što oni rade maksimalno vidljivim, ili je podjednako važno i obezbediti finansijsku potporu kroz nadoknadu finansijsku, kroz nagradu koju daje država i koja se može obračunati na razne načine. Jedan od načina je procenat od kazne koja se naplati kompaniji koja je prekršila zakona, na to ukazao uzbunjivač. Dakle, šta je bitniji, ovaj, uslovno da kažemo, moralni aspekt gde vi se izborite da ne može da se dogodi recimo nešto što se događa u američkoj praksi, da kompanija kada je uhvaćena, kako vi kažete, red-handed, čini mi se, da može da plati globu, ali da ostane anonimna i da se nikada ne sazna šta se sve radilo, iako je uzbunjivač obavio svoj posao. Dakle, da li je to najbolji recept ili treba uključiti i ovaj moment protiv koga su se naši uzbunjivači bunili, uključiti finansijski moment nagrađivanja ljudi koji rizikujući živote, porodice, se upuste u ovako važnu društvenu delatnost. Meni je rečeno da ste vi, gospodo, tu negde na dve struje, pa možda je zanimljivo da ih objasnite. Gospodine Divajn, hoćete vi?
I'm not sure that we do represent contradictory views. My concern with providing financial rewards to whistleblowers basically involves the timing of that development in whistleblower laws. Now, we call whistleblowing at GAP committing the truth. And what I've learned working with whistleblowers since 1979 is that solidarity is the magic word to get away with committing the truth. It's more important than legal rights to have solidarity and support from the public. And isolation is the fatal word. If you're isolated, no matter how good the law is, you're in a lot of trouble. And that's the reason for my caution. Transforming from one to the other really takes a cultural revolution. When I first came to the Government Accountability Project, whistleblowers were pretty consistently viewed as either nuts or traitors, people who are betraying their colleagues. And we've fought for almost 40 years to erase that bias. And I believe that we've won the cultural revolution in the United States. Now whistleblowers are the popular heroes of movies and of books. Every whistleblower law that I've worked on for the last 15 years has been passed unanimously because the politicians don't dare to vote against whistleblowers. And that's made all the difference. So I don't have a problem with us having bounty statutes in the U.S. whistleblower laws. They've been accepted by society, and there's some benefits to them. One is that it makes whistleblowing much more popular to the lawyers. They've become whistleblower fans once there were bounty statutes, and that had been traditionally one of our hardest things, is to find lawyers to represent whistleblowers just because it's a good deed. Now it's a commercial advantage. And I just really can't see anything wrong with commerce involving the truth. We have so much commerce that involves things that aren't true. Why should we discriminate against what is? But it does change the dynamic very fundamentally from freedom of speech to a commercial transaction, selling information for money, and the value depends on how effective the information is. There can be benefits to society from it, but there can be a real backlash also. And one thing that happened when we first passed the bounty law in 2010 in the United States is companies started retaliating against whistleblowers. It increased rates because they were suspicious of them. The corporate lawyers would come up to me and say, these bounty laws is the Judas model of whistleblowing. I was at a conference last month in Brazil, which is working hard to get a new whistleblower law, and the opponents of it, and it includes a bounty provision in the original law, and the opponents were yelling that this will be a whistleblower industry. That's very different perception than people who are committing the truth because they're acting from their values and their principles. And I think this is particularly dangerous in countries that have had a history of totalitarian governments where there's deep suspicion, with great reason, of people turning in their neighbors to the government. And then if they're going to get paid in addition to it, it can increase that suspicion. So to me, what it boils down to is that you pass the free speech rights first. You earn the cultural solidarity and acceptance of whistleblowing, and then you can turn it into a business. And when you do, there's two types of financial whistleblower laws. One is the recent ones where you just give information and get paid for it. There's another one that I actually like a lot better, and I think it's combines the best of all. It's called the False Claims Act in the United States. We passed that in 1986, and it's America's most effective anti-corruption law. And what this law does is enfranchises the whistleblower to do more than just make noise. They can actually, it's called a private attorney general statute because it breaks the government's monopoly on law enforcement, which is invaluable if the government's behaving corruptly. That we don't have to just rely on them. We can fight to enforce the law ourselves. And before we passed that law, the government acting alone was averaging about $25 million a year in civil fraud recoveries from government contracts. That's the context for this law. And the results have shown that the government can't do it all by themselves. And enfranchising, deputizing the whistleblowers to go and fight and win the battles against fraud, not just to whisper in the government's ear, but to go in and fight those battles on behalf of the public, has increased our annual recoveries of fraud since 1986 from 25 million to over $1.5 billion per year. And it's been getting much better recently. So once we've won the Cultural Revolution, I think that's the next best step, is to deputize the whistleblowers to fight those battles on behalf of the public.
Hvala. Gospodine Kon, izvolite.
I'll turn this on. I think that'll work. There is no such thing as a commercial whistleblower law. It just doesn't exist. And I understand it might. When Enron collapsed in 2002 in the United States, some of you may have learned of that. That was a major corporation built on a fraud. Billions of dollars was lost. A minor recession was triggered. A study was done by economists for the University of Chicago. Now, as some of you may know, the University of Chicago is considered a very conservative, if not reactionary, economic school of thought. These are not pro-whistleblowers. These are not social democrats or progressives. These are the most conservative economists in the world. And they sat down and did a study of fraud detection. And they did the study to protect business because Enron had collapsed, and corporations and the government needed to know how to protect society from these types of frauds. They studied every major fraud case for approximately a 7-year period of time. So it was accurate. And they determined that the law that Tom mentioned, the False Claims Act, which at the time was the only law that paid financial rewards to whistleblowers. And they determined that that law was the key to fraud detection. Everything in that report was accurate. It could have been written by the most radical pro-whistleblower person, because when you read it, it's like Holy Toledo. What they determined was that if you rely upon these heroes, if you rely upon those willing to risk their jobs, risk their lives, to expose wrongdoing, which is the old-fashioned model, which were the whistleblowers that Tom knew and has worked with for many years. I've known them for many years, and you work with them today in Serbia. The very few willing to risk it all. Real heroes. If you rely upon them for fraud detection, you will have a catastrophe. A catastrophe. Because there's so few of them. And in fact, they make no sense because they put so much economically at risk. So if you want to have a real fraud detection program, you have to realistically deal with people how they are. And that is to say, if you come forward with information and it's right and we can prosecute, we will give you a reward. And they looked at the False Claims Act, and they saw how that law radically transformed fraud detection in the area of government procurement, which is what Tom has pointed out, how it went from a very small amount of money collected to a very large amount of money. And they determined that it works. They looked at every case and determined there were no abuses. They looked at every case and they determined that all of the lies of the Chamber of Commerce, of business, of those who had a self-interest in hiding corruption were not true, that the misconceptions were not true. And they urged Congress and all legislators to adopt this model. And that is what has happened in the United States in the transformation, targeting at this time 3 areas of the economy: tax, government procurement, and foreign bribery, securities fraud. That's the model. I don't want to sit here and go over all the details, some of which will be in the workshop, but just one detail I want to go into, one detail alone. I also was here for the morning discussion and listening to the hardships of that panel. And like Tom and others on the panel, I have worked for years with whistleblowers who have suffered beyond what anyone should suffer. The very people that the Chicago School of Economics looked at and said, my God, if you rely upon this for a fraud detection program, it won't work. Because no one wants to suffer like these people are suffering. And to be perfectly honest, I'm so tired of it. It's not right. It's an outrage that people are treated in that fashion. So the only alternative is to adopt a different model. And again, I think what has happened here in Serbia is absolutely what needs to happen. You need a cultural change. You need a recognition. You need a free speech component. You need anti-retaliation. But you need something else. You need a mechanism that will give the maximum protection, which is confidentiality and anonymity, where the bosses don't know who you are. You need a law enforcement agency that will honestly take in these concerns and investigate them without releasing confidentiality. And you need to pay the rewards. Because I don't care what anyone says. If the whistleblower walks out with $10 million in their pocket, well, some of us may say, my God, I'm jealous. That's just, that's really a tough thing. But I'll tell you something else. It has an impact, both on the willingness of others to step forward and the realization of those in power that they will get caught, that there is an incentive, that their own colleagues may turn them in. And that's the change that we must strive for in the future. So that's, I know I've taken a lot of time and I apologize for that, but I want just to clarify that in my view, protecting a whistleblower from retaliation is absolutely essential. But if all you do is restore the worker to where they would have been if they had never blown the whistle, why would you blow the whistle? When you go through 5 years of hell and you end up where you would have been if you kept your mouth shut, but guess what? You never end up where you would have been. You will never get the promotions, the recognition, and you'll never get those 5 or 6 years back. You will never end up equal. So why not create a system where you not only end up equal, but you end up way ahead of the game? So I have a client, he's kind of flamboyant, Mr. Bradley Birkenfeld, who suffered tremendously, but now he has his Ferrari cars. And I say, I don't own a Ferrari, I like to bike. But I say this, send a message to all those other bankers and all those other people that yes, you can blow the whistle and end up on top. So that's how I see it. Listening to those discussions, we can't have a system where the whistleblowers are destroyed. And we have a system, we have a way forward where whistleblowers can end up on top. That, to me, is the future.
Mr. Kohn, I was following not from this place, but from home, yesterday's debates and the echo on Twitter. And when this issue was mentioned yesterday, you know the comments, the Serbian comments on your proposal were, wow, here is a job for the smart guys. Could this backfire in countries like Serbia, where the whole process is just beginning? Could this backfire? Could those who are against the idea of whistleblowers use this argument, look, this guy is driving Ferrari, to wage an anti-whistleblowing campaign?
Yes. The answer is absolutely yes. Yes. And that's the next fight. Because I was talking with some whistleblowers earlier. To me, like, for example, Foreign Corruption Act. The government must collect $1 million in penalties before 1 penny of a reward is paid. So these laws target the big fish. They target the leaders. They target the high-level people. And if anyone thinks that if you have a law that actually targets the big bosses, that they're going to sit back and say, find me out, take my $100 million Swiss account, stop me from taking the big bribes. If you don't think they're going to fight back, then you're in a dreamland. They will. And that's it's occurring in the United States. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce is gearing up. They want to fight these laws. That's going to happen. And then it's on the side of the people. What are the people going to do? And as I said to a whistleblower earlier today, I forget who it was, I said, you know, if you don't tackle the top government officials who are taking the big bribes, you will never cure your society of corruption. Because if the top leaders are corrupt, it will trickle down to paying the bribe to get an X-ray. Because the whole society is corrupted. But if you can hit the top officials, you have a chance to start cleaning things up. But if we think the top officials will let themselves be uncovered through a strong whistleblower law, well, there's a fight to be had. So that's how I see it.
Ms. Ann Maijers and Ms. Tom Devine, whichever order.
Sure. I'd like to start by emphasizing that Steve and I are really disagreeing here. He doesn't debate that we need to get social acceptance first, and I don't debate that this is a good idea at the right time.
Agreed.
But there are some things that I would want to offer a different perspective on. The first is that there's not any study that exists, and I think I've covered almost all of them, that says that people have to be paid in order to act on their principles. In fact, the studies of would-be whistleblowers who remain silent observers, overwhelmingly, the number one reason was that they didn't think it would make a difference. The second reason was the fear of retaliation. And it was a very distant second. And at first, when I read these studies, I thought, that doesn't make sense. And then I started to think about it a little bit more. Most people are pretty courageous. They're willing to fight and die defending their country. They're willing to fight for freedom. But if the only thing that's going to happen when you beat your head against the wall is you'll crack your own head, then you keep your mouth shut. So I don't think that finances, getting paid, is going to be the key for whistleblowers. I would not disagree, though, and it's important that it's been the key for the legal profession, and that's helpful for whistleblowers. The second thing I wanted to say is that depending on the timing, I am concerned that these laws with bounties have increased the levels of retaliation. My first principle, my first goal is to stop people from being retaliated against when they speak the truth. And most whistleblowers are not acting as critics to attack the companies where they work. They're acting in defense of the companies. The Ethics Resource Center did a study that showed that 96% of whistleblowers stay within their corporation of private sector whistleblowers. They don't go to the government because they're acting to defend the corporation against threats from corruption or people who are cheating the corporation. PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey of multinational corporations around the world that found that whistleblowers acting within the companies are responsible for exposing and catching more fraud than audit departments, compliance departments, and law enforcement combined. They should be the best resource for an organization, not a threat to it. And I spend a lot of my time giving speeches saying it's bad business to silence or kill the messenger. And I'm worried that without proper social acceptance first, that these sorts of laws which are paying whistleblowers will increasingly convince corporate leaders to view whistleblowers as the enemies who are trying to make money off of betraying the company. So I think we have to have the right environment for that. And you know, the other thing that's very significant to me is that you know, there is an increased chance of retaliation. For example, Mr. Birkenfeld, he's got his Ferrari, but he spent 2 years in jail, too. And that's one of the things that I'm hoping that Serbia can work on in its whistleblower law, protect against criminal harassment. But there's very good chance of being hurt badly when you're retaliated against. And the chances of getting money from these statutes is kind of like winning the lottery. And so that's why I think we have to have that foundation first of cultural acceptance.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just real fast, I totally agree about cultural acceptance, and that has to be fought for. But I just want to point out one thing, is the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, our top financial regulator, which had a history of being very anti-whistleblower and being terrible, to be honest. I mean, anyone who dealt with them before 2008 knows they were awful. These laws were passed, and the chair of the commission gave a speech. She declared herself, and the exact words she used is, the SEC is the whistleblower's advocate. The commission itself transformed from hostility to advocacy. She then went on and said that all of the horribles, all of the predictions of greed or whatever have not come true. That the information being given is absolutely incredible. And furthermore, that companies are strengthening their internal compliance programs because they want an alternative. I was on a panel with a corporate lawyer who stood up and said, we have to view whistleblowers as assets to the company, helpers to the company. Why? Because we don't want to get clobbered with big fines if they go to the government. So there's so many misconceptions and so many issues. But at the end of the day, the people who have looked at these laws, be it Chicago School, or be it the U.S. Securities Exchange Commission, or be it the U.S. Department of Justice, have said they work, and they work remarkably well. I would be the first to admit that the concept of rewarding a whistleblower is alien, because the concept is to destroy a whistleblower in most people's minds. But I would also say that as you move forward in building on what already is a very good law, you just have to ask the key questions. What are the key sources of corruption? And what type of mechanism do we need to detect and enforce? And I believe when that study is completed, you'll see that these are the laws that are needed.
Thank you very much. Ana Maјers and also Pol Stivenson and Ms. Andreјević, if you want to comment on this, you are most welcome. For Ms. Maјers, for you, I also wanted to raise another topic about the importance of being connected. We've heard this morning that some things that a whistleblower who couldn't get help by the domestic and local NGOs got help by some foreign ones.
Thank you very much. Well, part of being connected has just been played out over these 2 days for the level of information exchange, knowledge, reassurance, worry has all been in these 2 days, and we've heard from very many different people. And we can see that when power is threatened, whether it's in the shape of a government or a corporation, it will do a lot to stifle the message and to discredit the messenger in order to do so. And one of the tweets, I'm getting a little bit better at this, I did a few tweets and listened, that I sent around that's been picked up in the noise out there, is that as you listen to the whistleblowers, who come from very different countries and different legal jurisdictions, and even within the international community, you're hearing you're hearing unique outrages. You feel outraged and it feels unique, but the pattern is very familiar. And for someone, these two gentlemen have been working in the field for as long as they have, you've learned the patterns. Now, how they manifest themselves can come up differently in different times in a society's maturity through dealing with these things, and how you navigate that, only the people in the country really understand that. So for the solutions, in my view, they are homegrown solutions. For the debates and discussions and learning, those are connected. There are times when power now has gone global, so while we've been ferreting away in our jurisdictions, which now feel smaller, and they're often big countries, whistleblowers have gone global because power's gone global. And it goes across borders, and you can see it in the Council of Europe. You know, prosecutors were starting to talk to each other, and they were wanting to extradite across borders, and they wanted to share information. But NGOs, who hardly ever get any funding and are just working in their worlds, aren't having the time, and they're certainly not being funded, to go and talk to other NGOs. GAP, Public Concern at Work, of which I've now had the honor to have direct experience in both organizations, we're always contacted by NGOs who were looking at the issue, quietly getting in touch, and it was something they did in their spare time to talk about how they are doing it, what happens. What I'm finding really interesting is the tide is changing a little bit in the sense that there's maturity already in countries quite quickly, and we're learning back. And we need to learn back because we're still being asked by international bodies to be the experts. And there is a real risk at the international level that the policy and the treaties and the laws are skewed to one system or the other, and you start to debase what is very important in local, national contexts, local, national jurisdictions, legal issues. Reading the Serbian law looks familiar to me, but it also had provisions that were described to us by Madame here about that were Serbian, and it felt like that meant there had been a debate and a discussion. And I understand that it was a lively debate and discussion in the working group. That's what has to happen locally. You can have experts from the international sphere because you go and look at the states, as Public Concern at Work did in 1990, to talk to GAP and said, great, 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 no way could you go back to the UK and start arguing for free speech rights in the workplace in 1990. You had to come at it as good governments, better regulation, good democracy. You go to South Africa, and this is about a democratic revolution. You can't talk just about whistleblowing in an employment context. This has to be something that engages a wider community, and you see that as well in Serbia. The information law is one of the most important laws. Then the whistleblower law is actually where the information can get out when everything is trying to stifle the messenger. I wanted to just talk a little bit about, because we've had God, to come all this way to have an American debate was just great, an American agreeable debate, but looking at slightly different ways of addressing it was so worth it. But for me, listening to all of you was actually the golden nuggets of the last 2 days. Good investigative journalism is needed now more than ever, and I think that has come out. Pszczółka did the work. They're still doing the work of thorough investigation. Of course, you have Vladimir and Dragiana who say journalism, the word journalism by default is investigation, but we also come from a British context where tabloid press doesn't seem to investigate and likes to repeat sensational headlines to be sold. So good investigative journalism is now needed more than ever. But what you're also seeing is that they must take into account the whistleblowers who come to them, the risk that the mouse is taking against an elephant. So Yasmin Motoremi and others here talked about, we demand a lot of the whistleblower. And what does need to change is we also need to move from protection remedy to punishment of retaliators, to punishment to offense, because we need, the responsibility ultimately is the organization, the regulators in society. And we need to demand much more of them rather than always demanding so much from the whistleblower to prove everything. That is impossible. So the elephant is saying, you mouse can actually trip me up, but you are a big elephant, so you learn to stand in front of the whistleblower, you learn to sit on the whistleblower, you learn to swat the whistleblower away, and you get everyone to look at the mouse. But you're standing there as an elephant, and it's information. It's an information issue of who controls information. So we need to have the investigations, we need to have the investigators, but I think Hans-Martin Tilak and Vladimir and his colleagues also know that they need to consider the whistleblower in what that might mean in relation to running the story and how they run the story. So those are important issues now in our world where power is, information is power in a way that we are seeing globally. Digital anonymity is not the only protection for whistleblowers, and it's not their only vulnerability. So I think that they can be, and we know this from our work, they can be vulnerable by virtue of their relationship to the information. So as soon as it is starting to be investigated, and we've had discussions here, and lawyers know this, if there's 3 people who have access to the information, we start to know because there's an investigation that we start to be suspicious and we can go after them. We're vulnerable in a relationship to our colleagues as well. And so we need more. We need the solidarity as well as the ability to pass information in a protected way. And you saw that with the first real WikiLeaks individual, Chelsea Manning, who was isolated and alone and eventually revealed herself. She was protected by the anonymity, and Assange didn't know who she was. But that's a little bit, the only bit of it. And we always, I think, we're thinking in the whistleblowing world and the whistleblower protection community that you're trying to offer an alternative. It's not ideal, we need these other ones, between anonymity and silence. And you will see when you do your work, and Vladimir has had this, and Gap has had this, and other people, that when individuals can see they're part of a solution, they certainly don't mind being identified. It's until they know there's a solution that they come forward. And when they do, the group effect of coming away from an individual becomes a group effect of being part of the solution. So that's another Gap experience and public concern at work experience. When you have one and it starts to be listened and you create the group, then other people come to you and more whistleblowers come and you get the full picture. Lawyers, though, within the whistleblowing protection community definitely need to understand technology, just like journalists, a bit better. They need to use it a bit better. They also need to understand it because they also need to think about it in terms of the policy issues. So then again, I've learned so much by talking and being here and working with Pszczółka, but others with Global Leaks and the Hermes Foundation and other NGOs who are using that and why they're using it, and we need to be part of the conversation and share that across borders. So I think that lawyers and technologists also, and this is something the whistleblower community knows, the protection community and public concern at work knows, and GAP does it in a really positive way, is that you need to see whistleblowers as experts as well. you heard who was blowing the whistle. These are people who know their area. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're also clerks, and they're also the people who see bits of it. But these are people who are taking it further because they know it's wrong, and they know from their professional experience why it's wrong. So it's not just delivering a message for other people to investigate, them being questioned and being part of the solution. Now, at different times, they'll want to be there, but they are the experts, and they are less vulnerable if they're seen that way, rather than just somebody's thrown the envelope through the door. Law, I'm a lawyer, it's a wonderful thing. It needs to be there. You need the legal framework. You've got that. And it allows a discussion, though, in society, because you've had the discussion in the working group, which has brought society into a group. Now you have to explain what that means in practice. What does interim relief mean in practice? It means that you're creating a safer space to work out quickly what's going on. You heard these whistleblowers who were discredited over a long period of time, and being in that position where you're not asked about the information anymore, you're just defending your right to exist. If that's not dealt with right away by an interim injunctive relief situation, then you are undermining the message as a society. You're not doing them a favor. By giving them relief, you're actually holding off this onslaught, and actually the onslaught should never happen. Because if they're just mistaken, why the hell is it a problem for anyone? So I think you start to change the place. I think with the Whistleblowing International Network, for me, it was because this discussion had to happen. By being connected, we can also help with cases. By being connected and talking to each other, we can also help with policy. We need to give confidence to NGOs around the world who actually know how they are actually the experts in their nation states, just like whistleblowers are experts within their organizations about how power works and how you navigate your society, your legal system, your prosecutors, the good person commissioner who's head of an organization, the bad one that's head of an organization. How do you protect the institution, but deal with the fact that sometimes it's run by someone who's not up to scratch, as the Government Accountability Project had with the Office of Special Counsel, as the Public Concern at Work has had with the head of the superior regulator of health and social care. So that's why the connectedness is important and why we need to have these debates, and I've been so honored to be here.
Thank you very much. We'll open the floor now for questions, but before that, just briefly, somebody is sending a piece of news. Ms. Devine, you mentioned that whistleblowers are often seen as traitors. They are betraying their colleagues. In some cases, and we hear it in our country very often, they are betraying the country. Julian Assange was today branded a Russian spy. So the world is becoming a dangerous place. Are we now approaching the time where whistleblowers again will be separated on Russian and American, on European and spies, having in mind the conflicts that we see? And that's also a question for Mrs. Stevenson. Or is it history now, the calling whistleblowers Russian or American spies or traitors?
I think whether whistleblowers are viewed as patriots in their community or for their country, or traitors to their community or their country, depends on whether they handle their rights responsibly. Look at the contrast in public opinion for Mr. Assange, who indiscriminately just dumps any information into the public record without considering the consequences, the side effects, versus Mr. Snowden. Mr. Assange is very isolated, extremely isolated, even physically, and doesn't have that much public support. Whereas Mr. Snowden, despite the government's attempts to portray him as a traitor, has overwhelming public support in the United States, where he's viewed as a hero. What's the reason? Mr. Snowden made sure that there wasn't going to be any collateral damage, that the information, he didn't let Mr. Greenwald and Ms. Petraeus give the government the right to censor their disclosure, but to inform them if any particular information was going to lead to exposure of confidential agents and sources and people being assassinated. If you abuse any right, there's going to be a backlash. But almost all whistleblowers are very careful. They're doing this to act on their values. And your question really, it sparks the basic contradiction that whistleblowers have to resolve when they make the decision whether to remain silent or to speak out. I mean, they're at the crossroads of valid but contradictory values that we're all raised with. And they have to decide which values are we going to risk our professional lives for, and which values are we just going to pay lip service to. And just for example, we're all raised that it's good to be a team player, and it's bad to be a troublemaker or a naysayer. But we're also raised not to have much respect for bureaucratic sheep, people who just go along, people who don't think for themselves, and we admire rugged individualists who stand up for their own principles. Well, the whistleblowers have to choose. Or traitors, rats, squealers, tattletales. We're all raised that that's a horrible type of person to be. But what about people who see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil? They're monkeys. They're not even humans. One of the greatest shames of our nation was a few decades ago when a woman was raped and murdered on the streets of New York, and everybody shut their shades. They didn't want to get involved. Well, whistleblowers have to decide, am I going to be a monkey or a rat? Tough choice. Or there's the public's right to know versus our right to privacy, both fundamental to a free society. Or loyalty. We're raised that your first loyalty is to support your family. And by blowing the whistle, you may not be able to do that. We've heard that today. Rudolph his family couldn't even visit him in jail. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. That's why we have that cliche. But what about loyalty to your community? It might be your neighbor's children who die from food poisoning, or loyalty to the law. You can be a co-conspirator if you remain silent and are part of the cover-up. Or loyalty to your country, patriotism. I've had whistleblowers who, they blew the whistle because they knew that our troops were dying due to corruption by defense contractors who were selling faulty helicopter parts and making money off of it, not from the Taliban in Afghanistan. They couldn't sleep at night. Whistleblowers have to make those choices.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson, do you have anything to add?
Well, just to say, I do think that there are some whistleblowers, Mr. Assange, Mr. Snowden, who have caused damage to all our security. They had some points to raise, and I do wish they'd gone about it a different way. And I think that the advice function is very important. And I suppose if you're in the security service at least, which Mr. Snowden was, it's hard to get that. And maybe in the end you're forced into something or other, but I think the advice, they could have been better advised, and it's good to have an advice function, which I hope you'll have when you've got Pishtalka, and so a whistleblower doesn't do something which causes damage to himself or to other people unnecessarily. And yes, I don't see anybody as Russian or in this, no. I think it was just like mistakes. And as for Mr. Assange, yes, he's not very popular, and we shouldn't forget that he's confined himself because he's wanted on criminal charges by the Swedish authorities, who nobody suspects of improper behavior, I think. These are, as you know, they're criminal offenses. Thank you.
Imamo vremena za jedno pitanje. Evo, izvolite. Imamo 2 podignute ruke. Ako budete koncizni, možda stignemo. Izvolite.
Oh, it's true. Ja ću se potruditi da budem što kraći. Potrudit ću da budem što kraći. Drago mi je da... Jedan. Hvala. Rekao bih par reči o nečemu što za ova 2 dana nije bilo reči, a mislim da je bitno. Vezano je za strogo pravni aspekt primjene zakona o zaštiti uzbunjivača i kratka jedna opaska o pojmu i odnosu uzbunjivača i povezanog lica. Evo, da ne dužim, ja govorim u ime uzbunjivača Marije Bertke, koja sedi do mene, i u svoje lično ime, koje sam povezano lice sa Marijom Beretkom. Marija Beretka je uzbunjivač koja je prvog dana primjene zakona o uzbunjivaču se pojavila pred SUP-om u Novom Sadu i podnela dokaze o uzbunjivanju i tražila da se tretira u svojstvu i u smislu zakona o zaštiti uzbunjivača pred policijom. Marija Beretka je prva osoba po novom zakonu koja je dobila prvostepenu presudu u svoju korist. Ja sam povezano lice sa njom koje je uspeo prvi da dobije privremenu meru kao povezano lice sa uzbunjivačem. Predmet našeg uzbunjivanja je vrlo interesantan. Radi se o korupciji u organima državne uprave, konkretno u inspekcijskim organima grada Novog Sada. Jedan drastičan primjer sa velikom materijalnom štetom koji proizvodi, ili kada se bude saznalo za taj događaj, će proizvesti i mnoge nus efekte u smislu štete. Najkraće rečeno, radi se o tome da su određena lica iz vrha inspekcije dozvolili sebi da se izdignu za zakona i da opraštaju veliki broj kazni prekršajnih, to je da odustaju od iniciranja prekršajnog postupka i vođenja upravnog postupka. Znači, radi se o kočenju i bespravnom obustavljanju 2 vrste postupaka, upravnog postupka i prekršajnog. Da ne bih dužio, da bude što kraći, proizvedena je ogromna, velika grupa ljudi nije, iako je učinila prekršaj, iako je prekršaj zadokumentovan, radi se o prekršajnim parkiranjima na javnim zelenim površinama grada Novog Sada, iako je veliki broj zadokumentovanih predmeta, pokrenutih upravnih prekršajnih postupaka, vrh inspekcije, jedna osoba se odlučila da se izdigne zakona i da stopira određene slučajeve, veći broj određenih slučajeva, da ih, se kaže, žargonu stavi u fioku, da ih skloni, da ne moguće dalje procesuiranje, pritom, to toliko biti snažan, pritom ostavljajući i materijalne dokaze o svom protivzakonnom delovanju. Naime, on sačinjava službene beleške kojim se izdiže na zakona i bukvalno nalaže svojim zaposlenima, počinjenima da on obustavlja prekršajne i upravne postupke iako su prekršaji izvršeni. I to potpisuje. Da? Nemam pitanje, imam samo observaciju, mislim da je bilo vrlo interesantno, pogotovo za gospođu Andrejević, s obzirom da je ona govorila ovde vrlo lepe stvari i o istražnom načelu i još nekih stvarima, a to sam nameravao da kažem, mislim da bi to bilo jako interesantno, jer to je vezano za primjenu onoga što je ona uradila i osmislila kada je taj zakon pisan, što je vrlo dobro, zakon je izuzetno dobar, međutim, primjena je vrlo loša tog zakona i to je ono što je, da kažem, žalostno. Evo bi da kažem, imam da kažem još par stvari. Tu je. Dobro, hvala.
Hvala. Dakle, pa to je onaj, gospodin ukazuje na... Dobro.
Konkretno, evo, ako mogu da kažem da odgovorim.
Nastavit ćemo raspravu kasnije, ne možemo ponovno da završimo, zaista. Nastavit ćemo ovu raspravu, nije problem. Ja bih samo, Ljubica,
da. Dragana i Vlada Radomirović zaslužuju takođe aplauz na kraju ovog dela konferencije za sjajnu organizaciju i veliki entuzijazam. Vlado, tebi pripada čast da zatvoriš ovaj deo skupa, a vi ćete imati priliku, koliko sam shvatila, da razgovarate i u manje formalnom sastavu.
Ja prvo da se zahvalim svim našim gostima, govornicima, moderatorima, svima vama koji ste došli i bili ovde ova 2 dana da slušate ove zanimljive debate. Naša ideja kada smo razmišljali o ovoj konferenciji je bila da dovedemo uzbunjivače iz Srbije, da okupimo uzbunjivače iz Evrope, da oni razmene svoja iskustva i svoje životne priče, da bi videli koliko je to sve slično. Čini mi se da smo uspeli u tome i da možemo da kažemo da je ova konferencija u Beogradu samo početak jednog lepog druženja i da ćemo nastaviti ovo sigurno na još mnogo sličnih sastanaka. I takođe ono što smo želeli je da razgovaramo o tome kako novinari mogu da pomognu uzbunjivačima i mislim da smo i ovde kao novinari dosta saznali i da imamo mogućnosti da se zaista, ako se povežemo kako bi trebalo da se povežemo, ponudimo zaista efikasnu zaštitu svim uzbunjivačima. Hvala vam najlepše. Da, još jedna stvar samo. Ako možete da dođete svi na binu da se slikamo, jednu porodičnu fotografiju da imamo.